What's up, space pirates? This is your Admiral, the Dread Pirate Dr. Disaster, and I can't decide if this is more sad or funny, but after a full weekend of being released, Disney's Snow White is now sitting with the lowest rated IMDb score in the history of the company. As a schadenfreude enthusiast, I would like to communicate the following to the folks at Disney. And the poor word of mouth on this movie, people talking about all the controversy surrounding it, people talking about how just as a movie on its own, it's just bland and poorly put together, all of this word of mouth has resulted in theaters around the world looking like the following clip.
Down from there!
Look like an angel.
No. Control him. Hey, what are you doing?
Where the hell is everybody?
That's a good question. Where the hell is everybody? Please note that in that clip, the images playing on the theater screen in the background were the previews for Lilo and Stitch, meaning that the movie was just about to start. So this wasn't someone getting to the theater early and filming it empty just to make Disney look bad. This was a genuinely empty theater, and we can see this phenomenon manifest itself in the box office numbers, where Snow White ended up earning an utterly putrid $43 million domestically. That is tracking behind The Marvels, which had a budget very similar to Snow White, and which famously ended up bombing spectacularly. Right about now, you have to think that the executives at Disney are looking at Rachel Zegler, who couldn't keep her damn mouth shut over the past few years, and they have to be thinking,
Dirty perky shark, a back flat and Thornton, Philip Bunker Barton, Perkaluma Burt.
Alright me hearties, make sure that you hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also, don't forget to support the channel by becoming a member. There are multiple exclusive projects you won't want to miss out on that will be available to members only, including audiobook of a dark fantasy novel I've written. There will be more information soon, but the thing is, we can't just complain about the state of culture, we have to build culture. We have to make things. So, if you're interested in supporting a venture like that, consider becoming a member of the channel. In any event, Snow White's box office for its opening weekend ended up with a few million more than I was thinking the other day when I talked about it. I was estimating, after we saw the numbers for the first full day, that the movie would hit somewhere around $39 million domestically during the opening weekend, or that maybe it would limp across the finish line and hit like 40 million. But they did end up hitting 43. If you look here, the difference in my expectations came on Saturday. I was thinking there would be something like a 15 to 20% drop off from Friday to Saturday, but there was basically no drop off at all. Sunday is when we saw the big drop of about 20%, but this is still a massive L for Snow White, considering projections had them at $45 to $50 million, which is a massive drop-off from the projections from a month or so ago. The movie has just been trending downward, though I suspect that's because these media companies are trying to protect their corporate buddies at Disney. The thing is, they keep doing this. These media companies keep over-projecting all of these movies and then gradually adjusting them down over the course of the month leading up to the movie's release until they get it narrowed down to pretty close to what the movie actually ends up selling. I'm convinced that at least some part of this is meant to drum up interest and sales. You see, if they overestimate and show the larger numbers, then the movie looks like it's more popular than it is, and the cultural auto intake sheep will be more likely to go and see the film. This happens an awful lot with Disney movies. But anyhow, I digress. Snow White was a failure which is not going to make back its $270 million budget. There is a lot of speculation that the film actually had a budget of well over the $270 million mark due to reshoots and all of that with the CGI dwarfs. But even if that isn't the case, and $270 million is what it cost, they are sunk. You have to think, the Marvels had a $270 million budget, and that movie actually had a stronger domestic opening than Snow White, but a little bit weaker global opening. The worldwide box office for both films is almost identical, and the Marvels ended up limping across the $200 million mark, which ended up losing Disney a couple $100 million by the time marketing and everything else was factored in. But let's read what the Associated Press had to say about the film bombing. I'm sure they have a brilliant take on it. The article here says, the Walt Disney Company's live-action, controversy-bedeviled Snow White opened in theaters with a sleepy $43 million in ticket sales, according to studio estimates Sunday. With a budget above $250 million, Snow White had set out with higher ambitions, particularly since it returns Disney to its very origins. The 1937 original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was the company's first animated feature and paid for its Burbank studio lot. But this Snow White struggled to find anything like a fairy tale ending. The run-up to release was plagued by controversies over the film's handling of the dwarfs, who are rendered in CGI, and backlashes over comments by its star, Rachel Zegler. The PR headaches prompted Disney to pull back on its premiere. Also working against the film, directed by Mark Webb, poor reviews. Critics were largely not impressed with Disney's latest live-action remake, with reviews coming in just 43% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. But let's skip a little bit down to the part where they try to explain why the movie is failing. Here it says, efforts to modernize Snow White, though, quickly ran afoul. In 2022, actor Peter Dinklage criticized the remake plans as backward. Disney ultimately opted to drop "and the Seven Dwarfs" from the original's title and animate the dwarfs. Some right-wing commentators targeted Snow White and Zegler's casting as an overly woke production. Isn't that just brilliant, though? Anyone who disagrees with tampering with a classic story is just immediately labeled right-wing, as if nobody else could possibly argue with the progressive way of doing things. And of course, quite frankly, this is why these jackasses are losing power, because of their puritanical view on this sort of thing. You could be minding your own business, not changing your view on anything, not even thinking about anything political, and then suddenly, these weirdos on the progressive left will suddenly lump you in with the so-called right-wingers unless you completely toe the line. I promise you, though, there are a ton of people of all kinds who find Snow White distasteful. But whatever. At this point, I hope that articles like this just keep getting written, where they dismissively wave off criticism as right-wing, and just keep on keeping on. Because watching these movies flop, and watching the journalists lose their minds and try to cover for these films is extremely entertaining. But I'm going to leave it there. Drop your mockery of Snow White into the comment section below, and we will talk there. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your Admiral is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.